Hello, I wanted to welcome you to my final project for my social justice advocacy class, and I wanted to use this project as a chance to raise awareness and advocate for people who have invisible disabilities. Before I start, I just want to say my cat is right here. I felt bad about moving her just so I could film, so she's probably going to be here the whole video doing her thing. Anyway, I would like to start off this video by giving a definition of what an invisible disability is. I have my notes here on my phone, so I'll just be looking at that periodically throughout the video. So, an invisible disability is a disability or an illness that isn't immediately apparent when looking at a person. For example, I have an invisible disability, type 1 diabetes, and you probably wouldn't assume that I was disabled just by looking at me. Now, if you were to see one of my medical devices, then you may think that I have some sort of illness or something like that, but otherwise I don't fit the typical caricature of a disabled person, which is what we usually see in the media. What we usually see in the media is someone that may use a wheelchair or other physical aids, or has another more visually obvious sign of a disability. I want to give a few examples of invisible disabilities. You may not know that you have one, actually, but a few of them are diabetes, like I have, mental disorders, sleep disorders, personality disorders, chronic pain, brain injuries, and even digestive issues are considered a disability. So, some statistics are 10% of the US population has an invisible disability. To put that into perspective, 10% of the US population is about 33 million people. And about 90% of all people globally who have a disability have invisible disabilities, which you may not assume that kind of large percentage based on what the media portrays as a disability. So this affects people because it's sometimes really difficult to speak up about something you're suffering from if people can't identify it just by looking at you, because it's hard to get people to believe you and support you and care for you if they basically can't come up with the idea themselves. So it's difficult to get accommodations or to receive empathy from people when you're suffering from something that they can't see. And this is really important because this strikes a lot of fear in people who have invisible disabilities, and they feel like they don't have the space to talk about it. And if they don't talk about it, then they're not going to receive the care or the accommodations that they need. And if someone who is struggling with a disability or has to cope with it in their everyday life, and they don't get the accommodations that they need, then everything is going to become more difficult. Because an illness or a disability, especially a chronic illness or disability, is not something that just goes away. You have to deal with it every single minute of your life, and that includes during work, school, functions, like even your sleep. Like, it's probably something you don't even really think about, but people with disabilities, invisible disabilities, and just visual disabilities, or disabilities that you can distinguish just by looking at someone, those are times in their life when they're still having to think about their health all the time. This is important because this can make everyday life so much harder, especially if there is no outside resource, if the people around them are unwilling to help them or have no idea that they need help. And this perpetuates a system in which people with invisible disabilities are not recognized or cared about. And personally, I think that's something that we need to fix, considering that almost 33 million, well, not almost, roughly 33 million people suffer from invisible disabilities or illnesses every single day. So, some ways to help whether if you are not a disabled person, some ways to help are providing support to people you know have a disability, or disclosing to them that it's okay for them to talk to you about it and that this is a safe environment, because even just emotional support or, you know, a social aspect, a social support group can help someone immensely. It can help reduce stress. It can make you feel safe and happy and loved and cared for, and eventually that is going to help mentally and emotionally, which makes the load of having to take care of yourself and think about your health all the time even just a little bit easier. Another way you can help people if you are not disabled, another way that you can help disabled people if you are not disabled, is just by educating yourself on their disability, or asking them like what they can do to help you, or, you know, asking them to tell you about it and what their situation is like. Just letting them know that you are there to support them and that you will be there for them if they're struggling. Now, for people who actually suffer from a disability, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, people with disabilities are entitled to reasonable accommodation. So in the workplace, if you apply to a job and when you get to the job, you can ask for accommodations and they are required to give them to you. So that, I think that is something that a lot of people probably don't utilize, especially people with invisible disabilities or people that don't want to speak up about it. But this is a really, really important resource, and I think that we should highlight this in the media or in social media or anything like that, so these people know that there are resources and accommodations for them, so they don't have to struggle quite as badly as they may be. Another really good resource is if you're in higher education, or even like high school, middle school, elementary school, you can always talk to like the administration if you're in high school, middle school, elementary school, and you can get a care team set up. You can get a nurse to be there. You can like have your medical supplies kept in the nurse's office. I know this because I had to do this. And then in higher education, there's often a center for students with disabilities, and you can go there and get accommodations, receive help. They'll help you with their classes, and if you talk to your professors and be honest with them about what you're going through, they're often very kind and will help you through it. And if you run into a situation where someone is not being understanding, there is always the Center for Students with Disabilities, and they can help you with these problems. I think that also, if you are disabled, a really, really good thing to know is either your company's or your school's policies when it comes to disabilities, because you should know your rights. And if you know your rights, you probably will find yourself feeling more confident when you talk to people, and you have grounds on what you say, and you will be able to push and fight for what is rightfully yours, or what should be given to you. Another thing that you can do if you are not disabled yourself is donate and educate. There's a lot of great resources out there for those who are disabled, and a lot of places that take donations. They'll even take like old medical supplies, and you know, volunteering at places that helps those with disabilities is really, really great. Or honestly, even just connecting with some people who have disabilities, because I know that a lot of people with disabilities feel isolated, and it's hard for them to socialize, and just being a friend to someone who has a disability is really, really impactful. So that's basically the end of the video, but I did want to say that I will link a bunch of resources below to figure out, like, you know, to like how to educate yourself, like my statistics. I'll leave a document of my references below as well, and I'll link my website. So my website's kind of like a blog. It mostly talks about type 1 diabetes, and my experience has infographics and like memes and stuff. It was a project from my capstone, but it's also really useful, and I think there's a lot of good information there, so I'll link that below as well. And yeah, I'll leave links for places to donate, to educate yourself, and you know, and probably my Instagram and other people's Instagrams who talk about stuff like this. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and that's all I have for you today.